Welcome to the Popcorn Counter. I'm James Rosica.
Andres Lorente here.
And, when we're at the Popcorn Counter, we talk about various idiotic ideas that come up when we're doing the pod, and we can't think of how to sandwich them into the main pod. So we were talking about frenemies. You suggested, we should talk about frenemies. And when you suggested this, I had to confess, I kind of had an idea of what that meant.
Yeah.
But it's not it's not a current word in my vocabulary, so I had to look it up. I didn't really know what it meant. And this is right. So when I was 9 years old, I think,
yeah.
I was caught sliding down a grass bank at school by my very grumpy history teacher, who then gave me an essay. He said, write me a 4-page essay about good behavior. And it was like the only time I'd been given like a punishment at school, in pretty much my whole career there. And I was absolutely mortified. And I never told my parents while they were alive that I got this 4-page essay to do over the summer holiday and to hand in. So it mortified me for my whole youth.
You deserved it, though. How dare you slide down a grass bank?
Slide down a grass bank. Oh my goodness! Yes, it'll be straight to prison for me. Yes, and so I had, and it hung over me for the whole summer. And for the whole summer, then I had this kind of 4 sheets of full scale, or 2 sheets that the teacher had given me that I had to return when we came back to school. And eventually got towards the end of the summer holiday and I realized I'm going to have to just write this essay. And so I closed my bedroom door and made sure that my parents weren't aware and thought, how am I going to fill these 4 pages? And so I did the thing which probably most students do when they have to write an essay they don't want to write, which is I wrote in really, really large writing.
Yes, good trick.
Try and cover as much of the page as possible. And I started out by filling the whole of the first page by saying, the Chambers Dictionary definition of good behaviour or bad behaviour, something like that, is, and then I just wrote out word for word what the bloody definition was, because I thought, at least I can get 1 page down that. And now I'm finding I'm doing exactly the same thing for the pod. So I looked up, I looked up what frenemy is, and the return on Google, it said a person who pretends to be your friend but who is really your enemy. And I thought, well, wait a second, that's every villain in every film ever, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just like that's what a villain is. That's like that's Hans Gruber, isn't it, to John McClane in Die Hard, or it's Prince Hans in Frozen. It's like every single betrayal in the cinematic canon.
Yeah.
That's what it is. So I thought, well, that's not very good. So I looked at another website and it said a frenemy is a person with whom you are friendly despite a fundamental dislike. And then I got it, because that is the English definition of the word neighbour.
Really?
The sheer idea that there's somebody who lives in the house next door to you, and so you have to be kind of friendly and smile at them. But every British person fundamentally hates their neighbours. So we're going to talk about. So I've kind of figured out that frenemy is like it's like one of those like clever punning portmanteau words for something that doesn't actually need its own name. Yeah. It's like it's a thing that already exists. We didn't need the word for frenemy. We already have words for it.
Exactly. I mean, for me, it's a person who, I think trouble is important. So it's a person who gets you into trouble. Whether it's good trouble or bad trouble. And it's just, it's kind of, if we can talk about the Banshees for a second, it's that someone who inspires you to be a little bit fiery and do something that you might not otherwise do. I think that's why they can't be dull. So that was one of my requirements, is that it can't be like a dull friendship, because then it's really not a frenemy sort of situation. A frenemy is sort of pushing you to do something you might not do otherwise.
Or is not the idea that the frenemy is the person who seduces you into doing something? So they kind of they draw you in and then shut the trap.
Yeah.
This whole thing, it reminded me. I used to do stand up about 20 years ago, and there was a very good comic on the circuit called John Torrance. He's the brother of Pip Torrance, who's a reasonably well known UK actor. Yeah. But he's a hilarious comedian. He teaches communication skills these days. He used to do this gag, which never got a very good reception, but I used to really, really like it. And his gag was that he was saying, I bumped into my neighbour the other day, and there was just something different about him. I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was, but there was just something different about his appearance. And then I realised he looked different because I wasn't looking at him down the sights of my sniper rifle.
Jesus.
And that's the Englishman's relationship with his neighbour. That's a frenemy. That's what it is.
Yeah.
So these kind of, so it's like an ambiguous, ambivalent friendship.
Yeah, I think it could be. Yeah. Or one that doesn't necessarily...
Exactly. One of those friendships where good comes with bad.
I would say it's one that doesn't necessarily always go well.
Okay.
I think that's important, I think.
I jotted down on my in my little pad here kind of what kind of frenemy type relationships I could think of. And I'm afraid the first one I went to is such a clear populist choice from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So Captain Marvel. No, Captain America. Oh my God, look at that. Call myself a fan. Ooh. Captain America.
Yeah.
And Tony Stark, who is Iron Man, have this kind of, this slightly sort of chin to chin friendship. And there is a lovely scene in the Avengers. So written by Josh Whedon.
Oh yeah,
whose name is a bit of a dirty word now, but I think has been and still is a skillful screenwriter. There's a scene where Captain America and Tony Stark are arguing, and Captain America, well, he's a superhero and he has super strength, whereas Tony Stark is just a guy, but he puts on this metal suit to give himself super strength.
Yeah.
And they argue, and the argument gets more and more serious. And Captain America keeps telling Tony Stark, "Go and put on the suit, so we can have a proper fight. It's the only way to sort this out. Put on the suit," he tells him. Put on the suit. And then at that moment in the film, the bad guys turn up, and there's some kind of big explosion, and things start to go wrong. And Captain America turns to Tony Stark and puts his arm around him and tells him, "Put on the suit." And it's such a lovely bit of skillful writing that they can take exactly the same words and make it mean exactly the opposite thing within the confines of this little scene. It's a wonderful character moment, very skillfully written. It's a lovely bit of frenemy action.
Nice. Hard to top that. I mean, how do you top like superhero stuff or superhero and wannabe superhero stuff? I guess. I'm gonna go even more pop culture than you. I'm just gonna say.
Good.
Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid with
Paul
Newman and Robert Redford, and it's sad to say it's almost the same thing in The Sting, another film by George Roy Hill with the same two actors, but just this youth versus experience. I think they've just got a lot of reasons to either envy each other or hate each other, and certainly in Butch Cassidy, there's a woman involved too that they kind of fight over to a certain extent, or the woman could go with either one. It's more appropriate that she go with the Butch Cassidy character, but I'm sorry, the Sundance, but she's kind of really more involved with I guess she's Butch's girl kind of thing in that day and age. So I think those two actors too, they've done it again and again to a certain extent. So I like the fact that they've paired up in a couple of different films and sort of played the same things, if not even themselves, in both of the films. And they're definitely friends, but they definitely have their own motivations and their own intentions, and I think for me that works. That's very populist, but it does not by any means match any kind of Marvel universe stuff. So, are we playing for points again, or is this a friendly?
Well, that's a good question.
This should be a friendly, or is it a frenemy? A frenemy friendly.
I presume that is the reason why The Sting was made, wasn't it? Because of
Butch Cassidy went well.
Butch and Sundance.
Yeah, I would think so.
Let's just kind of get those guys back together again. Yeah, let's do another script with them having that same relationship.
Which is better than a sequel, I mean, you're talking just a little while ago, maybe a sequel for the Banshees. The opening is left, the ending is still left so open. Is it because there's going to be a sequel to a film that doesn't need a sequel? You could have, the implication is that you've killed them off in the first film, so I don't think you could do a straight sequel. But yeah, The Sting feels very much like a sequel for sure.
I mean, this love-hate thing, this must be something you encounter as a teacher, right? Because, there will be some kids really hate their teachers. Some kids love their teachers. Yeah. There are some teachers who are, hard teachers that kids come to love, or easy to like teachers that kids come to resent. Yeah. It's part of that power relationship lends itself to this kind of frenemy type interplay. The thing I'm thinking of is Whiplash. Have you seen that? The first Damien Chazelle film.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Because, Miles Teller in that film, he kind of worships J.K. Simmons' character, even though J.K. Simmons is an utter monster. Yeah. And yet somehow in their fighting and their rowing, they sort of become equals. And they're kind of both friends and mortal enemies,
Yeah.
and they're absolutely terrible for each other, and yet also they bring out the very best of each other's talent.
Yeah.
That's a very interesting, complex relationship. I'm waiting until my children are old enough for me to show them Whiplash,
Yeah.
just so that I can tell them, look, kids, this is what a toxic relationship looks like. So,
Yeah.
if you exactly, if you got taught by somebody like this, change class. That's my advice.
Oh God, yes. That's a traumatic film, and I was a drummer of sorts in my day, and just the drumming stuff was traumatic for me. And my heart was racing a lot through that film. So, and that I think that also has the mentor-mentee angle as well, which confuses it because the natural power structure there seems really solid early on, and I think that's oh God. I forgot the name of the director, Damien
Chazelle, isn't it?
Damien Chazelle. He does a great job of reversing that whole power structure at times, and certainly by the end. So it's that's a good one. Good choice.
Talking about your drumming career, for anybody who doesn't know, who is the drummer on the theme song for the Two Real Cinema Club?
Oh, that's me. Yeah,
it's you.
I confess, guilty as charged.
Oh, man, and that is some great drumming. That's what makes the tune.
Oh, good. Well, it's one of those cases where I think the podcast is so good that it makes the music sound better.
Oh, yes, that's what I meant, yes.
I'm gonna go for a threesome. I don't know if that's.
Wait, wait a second. Well, at least wait until the podcast is finished. It's pretty professional.
Virtual. It's a podcast threesome. Stranger Than Paradise. Jim Jarmusch. John Lurie, Tom Waits, and Roberto Benigni. I think it's just a wonderful combination of weird characters in a weird film. But there's this wonderful scene in particular where they're all in prison. They're sharing a cell at one point. And Roberto Benigni's he's asking about the word escape. And he's asking in Italian, how do you say this? How do you say this in English? And it's escape. And then all of a sudden it sort of just occurs to them they're going to try and escape from prison, which is... It's a great idea and a really bad idea, and for me, that's what makes it a wonderful sort of frenemies moment. Is that they end up just getting into more trouble, and they're all ludicrous characters and ludicrous actors, and it's just a lot of fun to watch. So I'm probably cheating a little bit by having the threesome there, but I love that combination. I remember that film really just striking me as being different and hilarious, and I loved it at the time. So.
I'm going to ask you a question now, which could backfire really, really badly. Because it's going to demonstrate my ignorance now.
Yeah.
Is it possible that the film you're talking about is called Down by Law?
Did I say Stranger Than Paradise?
Yeah.
No, Down by Law, definitely. Yeah.
Stranger Than Paradise. God for that. Right.
Oof, thank you.
I was about to say, wow, Tom Waits and Roberto Benigni. Wow, God, they got together for Down by Law as well.
Yes. I had scribbled down here in my notes Stranger Than Paradise also, which is definitely got I was trying to weigh out the two Jim Jarmusch films, and I think I had Stranger Than Paradise in my back pocket because that's a two-hander, but I wanted to go for the threesome. So, yes, thank you for correcting me. That's Down by Law, which is probably, 1980s? It's after Stranger Than Paradise. I'm going to say like 1986 or 1987.
Yeah, 87, 88, I would guess.
And it's before, I didn't really know Benigni at the time. It's a couple of years before he made Life is Beautiful. God, maybe even 10 or 12 years before that. Yeah. So check it out. It's definitely hilarious. It's Tom Waits kind of being Tom Waits. John Lurie's just kind of a straight man, and then Benigni's just all over the place, and it's wonderful. They get into good trouble. So that's one of my definitions.
I'm going to beat your threesome with a one song.
Oh.
Where the only film I can think of where there is a frenemy relationship.
Yeah.
And it's all between the same character.
Yes. I know what you're going to say. This is a good one. Good choice.
David Fincher's Fight Club from 1999, wasn't it? I think Fight Club was. And apologies, spoilers. Where's that bell gone? Because Brad Pitt and Edward Norton are in the film. But you know what? It turns out we discover in the third act that they're the same guy.
Same dude.
But yeah, Brad Pitt is like Edward Norton's perfect frenemy, isn't he? Because yes, he's kind of everything that Edward Norton admires and wants to be,
but
then takes advantage of that to push Edward Norton to be something that he's totally not comfortable with. Great twist in that movie. Good chemistry between the leads. An awful lot to enjoy. We were talking about toxic masculinity last week when we talked about The Field. And I guess this is kind of like the origin of toxic masculinity getting a name in theatre, in cinema.
Yeah, definitely.
With Fight Club's absolutely what it's about. And this notion of men punching each other in the face for fun is I can't imagine a more visceral symbolism for frenemy than that.
Yeah, good choice. Oof. And I thought the threesome was a good idea. Ah. Never is, I guess.
I'll have to take your word for that.
A relationship oneself. Self-love. I have one more. Now that we're talking about certain arrangements of numbers of people, McCabe and Mrs. Miller, which is a Robert Altman film with Warren Beatty and Julie Christie.
Right.
I like that. Great dynamic. She sort of comes to this mining town that he's sort of developing in the American West, and she comes as an English madam, and they sort of go into business together. But they also have this relationship together, and it's built, on profit sharing and developing this business as well as this relationship. But at the same time, he basically ends up sort of dying for her, and it's got the frenemy things with definitely a romantic twist as well. So their relationship is so complicated. And it works on all these different motivations and different levels. That I love that film. It's a great Robert Altman film. So I'm going to say McCabe and Mrs. Miller. So now we've got some sort of, we've got threesomes, we've got solo shows, we've got two guys, we've got a man and a woman. I mean, we've got a pretty good representation of frenemy situations here.
I think I tell you what. There's one important frenemy relationship which we haven't mentioned. This is shameless self-promotion.
Go.
Pub Guide. So this is a script that you and I wrote about 10 years ago, I think, something like that. Which was optioned at least once, I think. Was it optioned twice or once?
Once officially, I guess. Yes.
Right. Okay. Fine. Yeah. Which I still occasionally go back to. I think it's a hilarious comedy about, and I can say that because it's your original idea. About two guys as an American like micro brewer,
yes,
and a British buyer for a pub chain who is also an alcoholic, who go on a tour of the UK, ostensibly maybe to write a pub guide, but also maybe just to get away from their kind of their demons, of various kinds. And Simon, the alcoholic, is absolutely a frenemy to Drew, because again he seems kind of charming and friendly, but also kind of drives Drew absolutely to the precipice and gets him into terrible trouble as well. Those guys are proper frenemies, and they end up good friends by the end of the movie, don't they?
Yes.
But there is some pretty hairy they split up like in the third act, don't they, and can't quite bring it together. So it's I think that's actually a pretty good frenemy relationship there.
It's very good.
Why hasn't somebody made it yet?
What a pitch. I think that pitch right there is probably going to sell it. One of our listeners is going to run with that. But I think you're right. They end up better friends by the end, and the friendship is tested along the way. They get into trouble a lot. It's usually Simon getting Drew into trouble, but it happens again and again. And just two different characters too. Obviously different, coming from different countries and different backgrounds, and you just throw them together, and it's sometimes characters just start to do things by the very virtue of their backstories, and I think we sort of nailed that in that script where you put the right people together, and they're kind of obviously and naturally going to become frenemies, and it works. Yeah,
I mean, I think that is the essence of all screenwriting, isn't it? It's putting the right people together.
Yeah,
it's all about
or putting the wrong people together too. That's the other way of looking at it.
So what's that truism about screenwriting where it's all about story and character, but story is really just a function of character. So really it's just about character.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely what it is, isn't it? It's just if you get the characters right, all the other stuff will follow.
Yeah.
You just put the characters in whatever situation you want them to be in, and the story will evolve out of that. It's about the character and not the events.
I think that's what makes it so hard too. I still struggle with that all the time. You've got to know the characters really well, and they've got to be full enough where they're gonna take you as a writer to places where it just feels natural to go. And it increasingly, as I see films where that's not really done very well, I'm amazed at how wrong the characters are and some of their actions are.
Yep, yeah, we've seen quite a few of those recently.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Well, if only there were some goddamn producers hanging out at the popcorn counter, this would be a very different podcast.
I think our lives are going to be very different here soon. This podcast may have to become a thing of the past because we're going to be raking in money. We're going to be rolling around in it. Our mattresses are going to be filled with cash. Thank you, Jimmy, for pitching it.
Yeah, any day now.
Remember, that's Pub Guide. Pub Guide.